So, new series that has been on the cards for a long time, and it has taken a while to find the opportunity to get this kicked off. But kicked off, that's not a very good way to say it, is it? Anyway.
It's you.
I thought a long while ago, a big part of this channel is about the maybe re-emergence or the reinstating, re-engaging with, for the world, with the Divine Feminine. But for myself, this is a last few years, this Divine Feminine keeps coming up. And to be honest, I don't know, I can't claim to consciously in my mind know much about it. So I thought last year I would like to start a series of conversations with fine women that I do know who, to my mind, would have a lot of experience or knowledge or definitely interesting things to say on this topic. And that learning for me and those golden nuggets that I keep going on about, golden nuggets, hopefully that is the nuggets that are leading you along your spiritual path, your feminine way, your whatever reason that you have ended up here with me watching these videos. And this is a little bit up and down because we were going to go to Glastonbury today and go to the Abbey. This is my third attempt to try to go to Glastonbury Abbey. Not happening. Today is a medieval fair. I came to Somerset to stay with my dear friend, Reverend Laura, and so we actually followed our Divine Feminine flow and we're now in the car travelling on our way back to Somerset from having a beautiful day in Avebury. So, see how this turns out. Here is she's driving, she can wave hello.
About as far as we're going to get.
We're car chatting.
Definitely.
Because I have to get back to Cornwall to mother-in-law's for a roast dinner by a certain time. And we've just wandered around like we've literally had all day, which we have, but also equally.
All in the Divine Feminine flow.
Yeah, exactly that. So, Laura, this is a series of questions and I'm just going to bat those to you and we'll see what comes up.
Beautiful.
Okay, so number one, when I say Divine Feminine, what does that mean to you? What does that conjure up for you?
So, Divine Feminine for me is a difficult, or was a difficult word. Those words kind of never sat with me for a really long time because I have lived and worked in the spiritual kind of world for most of my life and worked with women for 30 years as a therapist. And so when people kind of start talking about the Divine Feminine, I'm like, oh my God, they're talking about kind of, women in floaty dresses in a field, kind of,
it's a bit loosey-goosey, isn't it? Like a lot of the spiritual stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's why I wanted to start this, because you think, what does it really mean? What is it actually?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, it was like, oh no, like I can't fit into that world. Like I'm not feminine enough. I'm not spiritual enough. I'm not, I'm not, divine enough. I'm not sacred enough. That was kind of my feeling about it for many years. And what I have come to recognise, so I founded a women's community 5 years ago called Sacred Sister, and
I meant to do that in the intro. This is very unprofessional.
That's all right. And the part of that kind of really hit home for me was that actually I'm not the guru. I'm not teaching you anything. I'm not sharing anything with you. I could sit here and I could spout off all sorts of things about the Divine Feminine, but the key for me is that as women, we are divine. As women, we are feminine. As women, we carry such deep wisdom in we literally hold that within us. And so when I think of the Divine Feminine now, I think of me. It's like, it's me, it's you, it's, you know, or I can feel back into, you know, the goddess archetypes and the fairy archetypes and the mermaids and the, you know, I can feel back into all of those things. They are all the divine feminine for me. A tree is the divine feminine for me. You know, the earth is the ultimate divine feminine for me, where she comes up and she kind of touches me in every step that I take. So actually, when I really hear the words now, the divine feminine, I'm like, am I spiritual enough? God damn, I'm like yes, I'm owning that, because actually I don't float around in a white dress, and you know, even in, you know, I run women's circles, and I get so rocked by these pictures that are like, you know, Instagram worthy, because everybody's been told to wear the same colour on that particular day, and it's like, and there's no judgment.
Flowers in the hair?
There's no judgment in that, you know, because actually we're all here to do what feels right for us. But for me, that was the first thing to kind of turn me off. So when I think of the divine feminine now, I really think, you know, you are the divine feminine. Like, your essence is the divine feminine. And of course, you can be a man and also have divine feminine essence, right? Like, you know, the feminine and the masculine lives within both of us.
Not necessarily anything to do with trans, exactly. No. Literally a manly man, like your good husband.
Yeah, absolutely.
My husband.
have a connection to their divine feminine. They understand that those parts of themselves. So the divine feminine for me kind of really, you know, it is really about owning that part of us, and how we flow in life. You know, we're not in that masculine world, that patriarchal world of straight lines and linear days like we are. You know, men have a 24-hour day. It's like it starts, it finishes. We don't. We have a 28-day cycle that cycles around the moon, that cycles around the seasons, that cycles around our bleed, and that means that actually that for me also is part of the divine feminine. It's like, you know, who are we to sit in that absolute cyclical living and say, you know, actually this is who I am, this is how I show up in the world.
Because we are living it, because by your natural biology you're on that menstrual cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're connected in a physical way before maybe you've even come to realise that that's
100%.
The spiritual and the cosmic and the, yeah. So we've just been to a spring, two ladies wandering in the fields. But when we got to that spring, you were saying that is the divine feminine, that even just being in that space, is that because of the water flowing? Is that because it's nature?
So for me, like, spaces feel like masculine or feminine. Like I have that kind of essence that supports that feeling of like, is this feminine? And, you know, and we often think of feminine as like, you know, if we think of it as soft and flowing, people think, oh, well, that means that we're too soft or we're too flowy, or we're not man enough, we're not hardcore enough. Actually, there's real strength and power in that, and there's real strength and power in the feminine. So for me, that energy, that way that flows, the water flows into the kind of, you know, through the spring, through the land, like that has an energy that feels very feminine to me in its rising, in the way that it comes up to meet me. So the way that I share about kind of feminine and masculine is, what does it feel like to you? What does it bring and rise up in you? That's the decision as to whether something feels masculine and feminine. Not what did somebody tell me? Did somebody tell me that this is feminine? Did somebody tell me that this is masculine? Did somebody tell me that, you know, this, you know, I don't know, looking at a really big square building right now, it's like, is that a masculine or feminine building? Like, it feels very masculine.
Quite a phallic-y tower on the corner there.
It's an old prison.
I wondered that when we drove past it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, you know, that's kind of, you know, what is that about? You know, it's called the keep. It's like, that's where things were kept. It's like, you know, so things have an energy. But the really important part for me with anything that you get inquisitive about is what does it feel like to you? You know, we just were at Swallowhead Spring, and I just said to me, it's really feminine. How did it feel to you?
Oh yeah, very much so. And I know you have a lot to do with the White Springs at Glastonbury, whereas I'd been to the Red Springs in Chalicewell a few times before I finally got into, it's a bit like me trying to get to the Abbey. I kept getting blocked from going to
You're
the
not
White
meant to be
Spring.
in that abbey.
And I would bump into you there, or you'd know I was in Glastonbury and you'd text me and say, oh, there are people there, the gate's open. And then I would get there, gates closed, not going. And then when I finally did go, I went with a couple celebrant friends of mine, and I felt like it was really masculine in there, and I was quite happy to stay for a while, but I didn't get the same feeling about staying there as I did at the Red Water, and it felt, I don't know if that was people energy that was in there at the time, or whether, and if I went back there again I would have a different experience, but that time that felt very masculine. And
well, again, it's like what energy are you carrying with you in that moment as well, you know? So, and I think that for me again is this like flow of energy. People talk about it like they've got some ownership over, you know, whether they're healers or they're not healers, or they can conjure up whatever, you know. But actually, my belief, and it is only my belief, and from my own experiences, is that all of us have
stay curious. We're going past a banner that says "Stay curious"
outside the church. You know, we literally have this kind of reality that we all carry the masculine and feminine energy, like we all have this capability of healing, so we just need to be awakened to it. It's like, it's the same, it's that awakening to what is energy, what is masculine, what is the feminine, what do we feel, what is showing up in the world, you know. How can we really tune into our own intuition to know that we have all of that wisdom? You know, I have a podcast and a YouTube and all that kind of stuff that I haven't really started yet, but I call it the Wise Sacred Woman. And I was like, wow, what gives me the right to call it the Wise Sacred Woman? And it's like, because I believe that we are all wise. You know, we all have wisdom. We all carry that wisdom. So yeah, that's it's getting really warm in here, isn't it?
It is getting really warm in here. It's like being in a greenhouse.
But you know, if we stick the AC on, you won't be able to hear us. And if we open the window, it'll be even worse. But we might need a bit of air in a minute.
Yeah. Well, let's just question: how does divine feminine play out in your life? I think maybe you kind of covered that.
But yeah, absolutely.
Tuning
I'm going to crack the window
letting it flow.
before we both.
Like a pair of hot puppies in here.
Women of a certain age in a hot car.
It's good practice for me.
So how does it play out
in your life?
So it plays out like we were just talking about every day, but it took a long time for me. Snuff Street. Oh, can you tell, like, we're both ADHD? We're like, look at this shiny thing.
There's a shiny thing.
It kind of plays out for me because I trust myself and I trust my intuition, and it took a long time.
I was going to say that must be something you've learned over time.
Yeah, it took a long time to come back to that. Like I only recently kind of started to really follow the flow and be like, actually, I can keep pushing against something, which again isn't particularly feminine energy. It's very masculine energy to keep pushing against something that's not really kind of working or happening. Or I can say, okay, what is it to take my foot kind of off the gas and just totally go, right, I'm going to follow the white feathers like we did today, or I'm going to follow the kind of, you know, what's coming up for me. So it plays out. And of course, that's partly because I have created a life where I can do that. Like, I don't go out to work. I don't have a job in the same way that other people do. You know, I run my life in a very different way. So I'm grateful for that, and I created it that way so that I can follow my intuition and I can stay in the flow.
But then also, you must have followed your intuition or your feminine flow or your gut feeling to know that you needed to do, instead of sticking with what is like, oh, I should get a 9 to 5, I've got to pay the bills, you know, you've just gone, no, actually I sense that this is the way I should go, and that's the way I've gone, and I've made it so. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, you know,
which is womanly in itself, isn't it?
Exactly
being a creator.
That. Exactly that. You know, we are here to birth our own creations into the reality of the world, and it's like if we're constantly shut down and not able to do that, then actually, you know, again, there's a big part of me that believes that, you know, the world would be a very different place if women were actually revered in the way that we should. I'm going to say should or could be. to know that actually we carry so much wisdom, but we're not listened to. So when we're not listened to, when we're not able to really show up as ourselves, you know, like what does that really kind of create in the world? What does that really say to those around us? Well, we're not saying to them, actually, this is how I want to be treated. This is how I value myself. This is how I take care of myself. This is how I love myself. This is the connection to my divine feminine. And actually, if I'm wanting other people to treat me that way, I have to start treating me that way first. And so that was the biggest kind of turning point in kind of, you know, shifting energy for me. It's like, I'm not putting up with this shit anymore. And if I'm not going to put up with this shit anymore, the only person that can change it is me. And so, you know, that's not to say, I mean, I have a great marriage and relationship, but it took a long time to get there. And every day is still a the word that wanted to come then was challenge. But, you know, challenge in a good way. It challenges both
in
myself.
A growth way.
Yeah, exactly. It challenges us to grow, and you know, nothing ever. So when, you know, when you say how does it show up every day, it's like it just does, because I'm listening, you know, and I give myself the time to listen. I get up early in the mornings, I journal, I sit with kind of, you know, sit in meditation, I dance, I move my body, I eat, you know, I look at what I eat and what my body needs, and yeah, so I guess, and I think that I stopped talking about this a long time ago, because in my world everybody was living that way. So I just kind of got to the stage where I was like, oh well, it's my work here is done, everybody's already got it, we're done. And now I realise actually that's so far removed from the truth, you know, so far removed from the truth. We just walked around Avebury today, right, and there's like, you know, probably a handful of people that are on that kind of trajectory, and the rest are there kind of hanging out, having their picnics with their kids, which is beautiful and amazing, you know.
Yeah, but they're not the ones that are touching rocks and hugging trees. No.
Thank goodness, it meant that it was more for us.
Well, this is true. When you were talking about that initially, the word coming through for me, which again is just I understand why it is, but the word patriarchy and that, but the issue I have with that, or I've been having with that recently, is I don't want to devalue or just dismiss that word and pretend that none of that happened and everything's going to be fine, because we're all modern women and we've got much more equality now and all of that sort of thing.
Have we though?
I just think, well, yeah, but I think it depends. It depends where you look and where you listen. I found an interesting woman in America the other day who, or a few weeks ago, and she was talking, she's done a lot of research, she's written a book, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but I'll find it and put it in here somewhere. And she went back to some feminists that are a lot of the books, certainly in American universities where women and men that are going to study feminism, it was falsified and things were left, and it was made to look like women. I mean, in many ways, women were having a really hard time now, and they didn't have the vote and this and that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the way she explained it just seemed really credible, and like you could just totally go along with her. But she's trying to prove an argument. This is like anything, isn't it? She's trying to prove an argument. I mean, I'm not here to prove arguments. I'm here to just sort of open minds and have conversations and learn stuff. And but it did think you could get quite caught up in it and think, God, yeah, listen to her book. And then I go and talk to my 22-year-old daughter about that, and she's just like, really, Mum? Oh my God, are you just like, I'm going to march for women's rights and the rest of it? And you think, I don't know, I think the issue that I've been having for quite a long time is this hell-bent venomous feminism that I think, to me, it's about, I understand where this is coming from, but I don't think it's helpful. And I think what I see the need for is readdressing a balance that has been long weighted on one side. But I think this is the point of, like, what seems to be emerging as part of my purpose in life is to be one of those that's not a hardline feminist, just to like, yeah, okay, this is how it's been, but the future, we can all change that. And like, I do think that the men have it in them, and they've had that squashed out, that feminine side, as much as the women are downtrodden. And then there's this patriarchy business, and that obviously seems to have come a lot through the church, which of course the church, especially in Britain, ran with the state, so therefore rules were made, and men just had this ultimate position of power, which is why we find our lives being run by men that are quite dominant, or even in loving partnerships, they're quite dominant, or it almost seems to be inbred into them that they should not be dominant, but they should be in charge. They see that taking care, if they're doing it from a taking care perspective, it does seem to come with that power because they're physically stronger maybe, and also this patriarchy stuff. I just think all that's so outdated, and I don't think getting angry about it is anything helpful, whether they're my daughter's age or they are actually just menopausal women that just want to stick it to everybody. From what I can see, massive chips on many shoulders. I see where that's come from, but I don't know.
Sure.
I don't think it's healthy.
No, and I think I really hear you on that, and I think people will often say to me, I run a women's community, and I have this women's community. Am I anti-men? Am I anti-this? Am I anti-that? And it's like, I'm not anti anything.
Oh, ambulance! Yikes!
Not anti anything. You can squeeze through there. Well done,
lady driver. Go the girls. She navigated that well.
She did.
Excellent. So,
yeah, like I wouldn't call myself a feminist. I wouldn't call myself, I'm me, and it's the same as like when people say, what religion are you? It's like, I don't have one.
Yeah.
My religion is love, and my action towards men or women would be love. Like, that is the fundamental for me. It's like, if it's not love, it's fear. So which camp are you in?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm in the camp of like, well, you know what? I will love everybody until the shit hits the fan. And so, excuse my French. And that is kind of the way that my life is. And again, like, I've created my life that way. But when I talk about kind of like, there's like anything that you do, there's extremists and radicalists, right? And it's like, there will be people that are on that kind of extreme bent of like feminism, and that's their path, right? But there is this place where you just talked about equality. It's like, I don't want to be equal to a man, and the reason I don't want to be equal to a man is because what am I equaling up to?
Well, good, because it's I suppose it's a thing about rights in society with laws and pay and this and that, but actually we're talking about a much deeper thing.
Sure, absolutely,
living and being in the world,
exactly,
being human beings.
And there are pay gaps, and there are all the things that happen, and there are like I totally 100% get all of that, understand all of that, and would be on the side of kind of like pushing for those rights to change from a legal perspective. But do they change because the law states it, or do they change because we choose to live in a different way? We choose to live in that, deeper feminine flow, and how we create our own kind of reality in the world, and therefore it's like, it doesn't have a place to be anything different. But change only happens when a number of us decide to stand together and make that change. But it also starts with each one of us making a decision that we want it to be different in and of itself.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of parts for me that I struggle with in the world. Is like, I don't live in that kind of normal kind of reality because I want it to be different. So why would I keep buying into the same reality? So I think, when we talk about patriarchy, for me, it's like, we are carrying, right? If we consider that within our DNA, we carry 7 generations of DNA, right? That's
is it 7?
Yeah. So that's a scientific reality of like, we carry 7 generations of DNA within our system. If that's the case, right? I carry the DNA of the witches that came before. I carry the DNA of the women that went through the Industrial Revolution. I carry those as beliefs within me because they are beliefs that have been handed down to me through my ancestors. The only person that can change that, if I decide to change it, is me. So I can keep putting out there that I want it to be different, and we want equality, and we want this, or I can live it differently, and I can say, actually, I'm not living that way. And I've got a 14-year-old daughter now who is not in school. She's doing her life her way, because actually I could have put her in school. We tried numerous times. It's not a safe place for her to be. We have a friend who sort of took her own life last year. It's tragic that what our girls are feeling in the world, and yet I'm so happy that she's out of that system that would have oppressed who she is, wouldn't have allowed her to be herself. So we've made a choice, and it's a big choice, because I can't, I have to look at how I work and what I do and what we earn to make it all work. But, we've made that decision, because actually that's what's right for her. And that's me standing by a reality that I'm saying, if we want it to change, we can't keep doing the same thing and expecting it to be different, because it won't be. We have to live that change.
I think as well, we only live however many years we live, but it's such a tiny, tiny, tiny speck on the long, eons of the world existing and humanity existing and there being society and all the rest of it. And I have a sense that, as horrible as some of it's been, it's kind of had to play out. It's almost like it's written, like a Akashic record or whatever.
Totally.
And so now, of course, we're coming to this, we're in the beginnings of this age of Aquarius, which stands for, or has the power of this. It's the sign is changing, but that sign is bringing change and expansion and new thought and this coming of potential to make it different. Whether it's harking back to some golden age that we think we know about, or whether actually whatever it is, we can kind of start creating the golden age. But it is us living on the planet, and we do have to, that's not just going to just cosmically happen. It still has to happen by the people doing and living and acting and
totally. And when we consider that as women we've wanted it all, right? So we wanted equal rights, we've pushed hard for it, we've got what we want. I look at some of the younger generation, and for me it's about also restoring the lineage that we've lost. We've lost this lineage because we don't look to our elders. We call them elderly, stick them in nursing homes, we don't listen to them. We don't pass our knowledge down, because our younger generation think that we're all shit because they're too busy watching everything on social media. They know it all, they've been there, they got it all, they don't need to listen to us. And they're mostly kind of maybe with mums who have not dealt with their own past trauma, so they're not listening to them either because they don't think they know it. So we've lost this kind of lineage. But for our generation, nearly 50, we wanted it all, we pushed really hard. That's why things have shifted for the younger generation, and in a lot of ways, and yet they're still battling a lot of other fears and things that are going on in the world. But then we
seem to ramp up.
But then we reach kind of menopause, and we're screwed, because not only did we want it all, and we got it all, and we now work, and we now do all the things, but we also still have to do the house, do the home. With the best will in the world, my husband's amazing, but he still doesn't do all the things that I do at home. He thinks he does, but he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Because he has no idea what I do at home in the daytime.
Yeah.
I still do the cooking, I still do the shopping, I still do the cleaning, I still manage, all of that stuff. I manage the kids, I manage, and I work more than full time. And so what happens then is that our cortisol levels are really, really high, and then we reach menopause and we're screwed, because actually we've forgotten that meno has pause on the end of it for a reason. We're supposed to take that time. We're supposed to connect with the wisdom that's within. We're not, and instead what we get is we end up with a whole bunch of symptoms. Now that's not to say that you shouldn't be looking at your symptoms and going on HRT. I was on it for 9 years because I had a hysterectomy at 40. But now at nearly 50, I've come off of everything, and I'm like, right, actually, menopause for me was not a physical thing because I'd already had everything removed, but there was a definite 43 onwards, 44 into 45 was like a massive spiritual awakening. And it's like, actually, if we could hit menopause at, you know, in a calm space where we weren't overworked, we weren't exhausted, we weren't done bringing up our children or dealing with teenagers because we're having kids later in life, actually in reality, you know, we hit, and like cortisol symptoms are identical to menopause symptoms. So it's like, actually, we wanted it all, we got it all, and now we're like completely screwed. And then we're having to like lean into, you know, science and medication in order to feel better about ourselves. Whereas actually, yet again, if we could just come back and say, you know, what is it to be in the divine feminine flow of our life? We're not supposed to be working that hard at this stage of life. We're not supposed to be raising teenage girls at this stage of life. We're supposed to be in a different place. But, you know, the whole world is a bit crazy and we can't live in that way. So again, it comes back to that feminine flow. It's like, if we were allowed to fully embrace who we are and live in that feminine flow, life would be much different for most of us.
See, that's reminded me of the part of the case that the American lady was making, that kind of like we've been tricked. So in the way that people have been tricked into, by clever marketing, into being these now consuming material everything kind of a people and society, that we were tricked into not only was like being divine as a female taken away and diminished and made to be bad, we were also like conned into, but you do want all this stuff and you do want to be like men and you do want to have your own choice and have your own jobs and blah blah blah, and we sold ourselves down the river by following this. But we were tricked into it, and it started with the Industrial Revolution because they needed more workforce. And initially they started bringing in immigrants, and then even that wasn't enough. And so there was these people getting richer at the top and they needed more, so then they started bringing the women in. And but marketing it is like, well, you can have the power and the say-so as well. But then you didn't have the power and the say-so because you didn't have the vote, you didn't have this, and you got less pay, and you were doing the housework and the kids still. Yeah, it's a merry old mix. Also, it's made me think of how, and I am guessing this was still a thing, you probably know about this, in our end of the world, but certainly there are still tribes that in other parts of the world that still do it now. Even the like coming of age with your menstrual cycle starting, that was marked or ceremonially or celebrated or whatever. So, and I would be guessing that maybe menopause would have a similar something sort of a thing. Is that
sure, yeah. So
you're not realizing your bodily.
We've lost that ritualistic reality of what happens in our bodies, in our lives, in the way that we connect. So when I started my periods, you know, my mum told me it was the devil's curse. It was the worst thing that was ever going to happen to me.
Oh God, yeah, is that where it was called, the curse?
And guess what? That's what it became. Like, it became horrendous. I had the most horrific time until I had a hysterectomy at the age of 40. You know, it was horrendous. And I lived my mum's reality because my mum had her hysterectomy like at 35. You know. And my daughter's now 14 and she started her periods a couple of years ago, and we had a beautiful kind of ceremony and we connected over it, and it was a beautiful thing. And again, partly because she's not at school, she's able to manage whatever comes up for her. Like if she has her period and she spends 2 days in bed with a hot water bottle, but that's what she needs, and she doesn't have to get up and go to school in that time because that's the choice that we've made. So she's able to readdress kind of what that means for her because she's living in a different way. Most of us is not possible. So we're like, if we look at everything about it, it's like when we've lost that divine feminine, inner kind of world, inner wisdom, and we put it all outside of ourselves for someone else to fix, or someone else to look after, for us to get to a different place in the world, we end up losing that flow again, because it's like actually, and again, we become more masculine in our way.
Yeah. Okay. Question.
How are we getting on with those questions?
We're on 3. How do you see the relationship between God and divine feminine in whatever way you understand God to be?
Wow.
Because I hear talk of the mother God, the father God. That's very much only in the circles that I would mix in.
Yeah.
That is not.
But
like
so for me, I have the same reality. Like, who is God? What is God? Is God separate from me, or is God me in everything that I do, and in the trees, and in the like, you know, if the divine feminine is all those things, if God is in all those things, if the divine masculine is all of those things, then it's not separate from. Like, when we keep separating from everything, then we make someone else in charge, right, of our own reality. Whereas actually, when we come back to, well, you know, what is God really? Who is God really? My daughter said to me the other day, who knows that God's a man who like did this and did that and did the other? Like, who knows? You know? And it was like, well, okay, yeah. She's like, who knows, really? You know, for me, that essence is love. Again, we come back to that same energy. It's like that's my view on it, and I know that that's not the same for everybody, but it's like, you know,
but more like
who's
yin
to
yang,
say that God was a woman?
Each and each, and it all swells around together, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Number 4. What changes? Oh, we've kind of almost touched on this. What changes do you think we would see culturally and socially and in family and work life if divine feminine was really like it was just a part of our day, same as God or atheism?
Exactly what we said. That for me is the change. Like, the change when you begin to really listen to your inner wisdom is the change that is being called for. And whether it's divine feminine or whether it's your inner wisdom, like, you know, that is how we make the change in the world, by listening to ourselves, you know. And I my intuition, the word that just came to me is like, well, what about war, right? Like, what about places where, you know, these Afghanistani women are being shut down, Iranian women are being shut down, not allowed to speak, not allowed to kind of, you know, show themselves in public, all of those kind of things. You know, they don't have control of that. They don't have.
Who's doing their shopping, lucky ducks?
Yeah, you know, they don't have control of that situation for themselves.
Which is just, and like, so, how can you be a human being and you're just being controlled?
Exactly.
The entire time.
Exactly. Like, and so you are living in a fear-based society. You know, there is no love in that society, because you wouldn't be able to live that way, treat people that way, connect with people that way. So, you know, but there's a human being that's calling the shots, literally calling the shots, that is also in fear of something, otherwise they wouldn't be behaving that way. So it's like, again, that kind of, you know, if I could wave a magic wand and have my way, like, everyone would just find love. And it starts by finding love for yourself. And that's where the change happens for me, you know.
Yeah.
And there are, sadly, you know, some really big issues in the world that mean that that's not possible for many of us, not even to love ourselves. Yeah. I had a client the other day, I shared this with you last night, I think, you know, I asked her the question, you know, how do you love yourself? Like, what is self-love to you? And she was like, I'm not even sure I would know what that meant, let alone how to answer it. And I was like, okay. And I said to her, you know, what would it mean if I asked you, you know, where do you value yourself? Like, on a scale of, you know, 1 to 10, if like 10 is like, I'm top dog in my house, I completely value myself over everybody else, and 1 was, I don't even know if I feature on the list. That is a reality. She was like, oh, I can answer that one. Like, that makes more sense to me. Like, I can answer the value thing over the love thing. But it's like, where do those two things come in? And so I was like, actually, in reality, self-love is the goal, right? Self-value is how we monitor kind of where we've got to, and self-care is how we get there. It's like, what am I doing to care for myself, to look after myself? What am I doing to take full radical responsibility for myself in what I'm doing, and how I look after myself, and how I look after the planet, how I look after my family, how I look after, you know, what is it that I'm doing to choose to really make a difference in the world? And I think that's the only way I see radical change happening, is that we take serious self-responsibility.
Yeah, and even just in like a social way, when there was the pandemic, and I just saw, I don't have a telly, I don't watch the news, but the bits that I was gleaning, it just looked like everyone was just, the general public were waiting to be told by the government what to do. And you think, bloody hell, what's happened to common sense, you fools? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think? What do you feel? What's going on in your local vicinity?
We're not allowed to think and feel.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous. Because, wow, that much about politics, but I see the people that are doing the politics, whether it's the Labour Party that's in at the minute or the other lot, and you just think, God, if there is a lot of intelligence among you and you've all been to Eton and Harrow and flipping Oxford and Cambridge and all the rest of it, a good lot of you, well, where's your intelligence? You seem to be thick as shit in the real practical.
So this divine feminine ended up with a chat about the bollocks of politics.
Oh yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? It's everything is so interlinked.
Absolutely,
it's so interwoven, and
all right. So you got 3 minutes before we get home.
Okay. Do you?
We're going to run out of fuel because we didn't stop for that either.
Oh God. Do you think we're seeing a major re-emergence of the divine feminine? I seem to be seeing a lot of Instagram things. Old Megan Waterhouse is doing her thing. What's she called? The woman that's written the Venus book. There's a lot of, like, my friends, like Reverend Jane, and people are sending little posts of people, these groups of women chanting Mary Magdalene things and all that, and you just think, wow, is this just because it's on my radar? It's like once you search for something, that's everything that Google throws at you. Or is it actually just that this wasn't around before so much? It was more underground, or it was a very minority, and now it's more broader, the same as crystals, yoga, mindfulness, and all of that is branching out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, obviously, if you are looking at that stuff, it's going to come up and be more prevalent and more in your face. I think that in and of itself is how corrupt our world has become, right? But at the same time, I think there is an uprising of the divine feminine because we're not prepared anymore as women to say, you know what, let's just lie down and let you do what you like. Actually, we're saying no, this isn't okay, and this is not the way that we want to be treated. It's not loving, it's not kind, it's actually just not okay. And I think the more of us that step up and say that, not even just in the feminine, but in us as human beings, it's like the more of us that step up and say that, the more change comes, the more we begin to see the shift happening,
Yeah, this is not acceptable.
Yeah.
And it does seem to come along, marrying along with more people searching for meaning of life, more people going down a spiritual path.
Yeah.
And when you said, like, the lady that said she doesn't know exactly what you mean by the love thing, I think that's the thing with a lot of this sort of so-called spiritual stuff that's lumped into that big pudding. People don't know, they're put off by the women in floaty skirts and the crystals and the incense because they don't think they see a certain type, or you have to be this, and then the language is a bit vague or confusing or pretentious, or it's a bit. I think I just like to get to the root of a thing. It's actually very simple, isn't it? It's very basic. We're humans. It's not anything that's not within us, I think.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything relating to the... Oh yeah, so is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you think is kind of a key thing to add in here on Divine Feminine?
No, not really. I think the key is some that had to be a man that put that there, didn't it?
Oh, there's a hole in the road, and they've tried to fix it, and now it's the tiniest gap to squeeze around the corner.
Honestly.
That's a bit like that stupid kissing gate that's not attached to any hedge or fence by the spring. And you're just like, well, what for what purpose if you put that bloody
there?
Ugly thing there?
And what's really funny
no
is
good at all.
they've put a sign that says, like, you know how the sign does like a wiggle, like it's a single track lane. We're in a country lane. It is only a single track anyway. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Anyway,
there is only four.
So there is only a tiny road. Yeah, is there anything else? I think the key for me is find your own way, find your own path, listen to your own inner wisdom. Like that is, whether it's divine feminine, whether it's, whatever you choose to name it that feels right for you and good for you. Like, actually, what is your path, and can you wholeheartedly live by it? And yeah, you know, I often say to people, you know, live an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, live in the most virtuous, beautiful way that you can, and 20% of the time, just bloody go and enjoy yourself, because we still live in this reality, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think I feel the same about, you know, whatever path you follow, just get on it and follow it.
Can you give me or us a way in which we can engage further or express? I mean,
You listen to yourself, quiet in times.
and do you think that maybe for some comes through ritual bathing or ceremony,
Yeah.
or it's just as easy as just living your day and being
Yeah.
more conscious about your thinking? I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? We're all different, and it's going to be something for each of us.
Absolutely.
It's all of that and more.
So again, it's like the minute you come to that place, just try that again.
How many times have you reversed in this
Into
driveway?
my own driveway.
It's all good.
Oh dear. It's because I turned my BPs off. Yeah, I think it's really about, you know, what resonates with you. How do you find that? And the only way that most of us can find that is to spend a little bit of time considering it. You know, the reason that we don't know it is because we don't consider it. We don't think about it. We don't give it time.
But that's what's making me think it's actively creating pockets in the day where you're not doing for others. You're not doing anything. I mean, I do think about a lot of stuff when I'm driving or doing housework or shopping. But actually, I find I get a lot more if I actively go, right, do you know what? I'm giving myself 20 minutes, half an hour here.
Quiet time.
To just sit and think.
And people kind of talk about meditation, but the minute they give it a name like meditation, they think, oh, I've got to sit and I've got to light a candle and I've got to kind of cross-legged and I've got to say the word Om and I've got to, you know, it's like, it's not, it's just quiet time. It's quiet time.
Stillness.
And that's stillness and breath. Like your breath is like the clearest pathway to your inner world. So, you know, even just sitting and taking a deep breath, like just brings you back into yourself. Like that's one of the easiest ways. But then it's listening, and it's not doubting yourself. You know, that's the other thing. It's not giving yourself a second kind of like, my cat talking about the divine feminine, comes the big fat tomcat. You know, it's like what is it that you need when you just sit long enough and you connect in long enough? It's like what do you need to feel different in yourself? I'm just going to open that door now because it's really hot.
So the other part of this video is doing it like, these video series is doing it like a chain. So you would pass me on. Now, we haven't asked the lady this permission, so to be fair, this might not even make it into the video. But who would be the person that you would pass me on to for the next bit of learning?
I think you should check out Alethea Sophia. She is based in France.
En France?
In the Magdalene kind of space in Cathar country, and she took on an old monastery, and it's got a beautiful chapel connected directly to Magdalene. It's like, and actually I think you should just probably go out there and visit.
Yeah. It's going to be on the pilgrimage list for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so hopefully that will emerge and she's going to say yes, and this will end up in the video. Because if she says no, I'll just find someone else.
If she says no, Reverend Cheryl.
Oh, yeah. You're nominating Reverend Cheryl. Okay, well, let's see what happens with Alethea. Alethea in Languedoc sounds perfect.
There you go.
Okay. Look at that. 46 minutes. That's the car journey. And we smashed it. Thanks, babe. This is my amazing friend Laura. She does women's groups. She does Sacred Sister. That's the thing you want to check out. And the YouTube channel is Sacred Sister CIC.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's us.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Peace be with you. Ciao.